Yeah, okay, excellent. Thanks, Paul, for being. And I actually went to the airport twice. So Paul landed this morning at 5 o'clock or something like that, and then I went back to pick up my wife, who was flying in from Labrador, and then so I dropped him off at the house, and then I went back to the airport, and I said, listen, just sleep it away, just sleep the afternoon away. I said, I'm going into Halifax for church, and when I got back from the airport with my wife, there he was, all up and awake and sitting pretty and ready to go. He wouldn't miss it for the world. I had to bribe him with an ice cap, but we got him. Okay, so for the next couple hours, we're going to be in Mark chapter 6. I made that dumb joke when I was in one of our southern Nova Scotia churches, one of our little kind of outport fishing communities. I got up and I did the same stupid routine. I said, the next couple hours we're going to be in Mark chapter 6. And this big gruff guy in the back, he stands up and he goes, Pastor, in this church, you can preach as long as you want. And I'm like, yeah, that's what a preacher wants to hear. And he paused and he said, but at 12 o'clock, you're preaching to yourself. So he said, you can go as long as you want, pal. Lock up as you leave. Anyway, it's fun to be with you. Pastor Keith and I are becoming good friends, and he's been a part of our district and has some unique gifts in the Spirit that I really appreciate. And he has spoken into my life several times, and he's prayed for me several times at our conferences, and those have been meaningful. So you're blessed. You're blessed to have him as your leader. Mark chapter 6 is where I want to focus in today. And the title of the message, I don't know if you record these or put them, but the title is simply Plan B. Plan B, which is a bit silly because I'm not living in Plan B. I'm living in Plan W. Like, I've made so many mistakes along the way of life that I've stepped out of the will of God so many times. Every time I've sinned, I've stepped out of the will of God. So there's a couple things I don't understand. I don't understand the grace of God. I can, on paper I understand it, but in my heart I don't understand it. The goodness of God toward me, I don't understand. The fact that He called me into His kingdom, I don't understand. The fact that He uses me in any way is baffling to me. And one of the things I don't understand is God's will. I don't understand God's will. I don't understand. This is why we brought Bishop Fraser with us. He could explain the theology of it afterward. I don't understand how I could step out of God's will so many times and still find myself in the perfect will of God. I can't, my mind can't sort it out. That's a Paul problem, not a Jim problem. I don't understand it. For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, and me, the chiefest of sinners, have found myself outside of what God had intended for me so many times. Has anybody in the room ever made a mistake? All right. Okay, so just Pastor Keith, nobody else? It's odd, it's odd that most of the hands are on this side. These people over here, they got it. Okay, that's it. They're just slow confessors. I get it, yeah. Right, we've all fallen short of the glory of God. And yet God can be so miracle working and supernatural in our lives that as we make mistakes in the past and daily, He still is gracious, abounding in love, does not, as Scripture says, does not treat us as our sins deserve. He doesn't repay us according to our iniquities. And I know I stand in a room today of mistake makers, right? And people who have fallen short of the glory of God. But yet I stand in a room of people who believe that God redeems. And I'm standing in a room of holy people, spotless people. It's a lot, right? I can stand here spotless, forgiven, justified. I can mind-boggling. I can stand before God and be pure. He doesn't have to cast me out because He has washed me with His wonder-working power of His blood. All right, a couple quick things, and then we'll head out into the cold. Mark chapter 6, verse 45. Let me kind of walk through this scripture with you, and we'll see where we go. Verse 45 of Mark chapter 6. Immediately Jesus made His disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of Him to Bethsaida. Okay? So immediately Jesus made his disciples get into a boat, and then he said to guys, go to Bethsaida. Now, Bethsaida translates as fish house, which means it's Lockport, Nova Scotia, right? It's fish house. His guys get in the boat and head over to fish house, Bethsaida. And he said, while he dismissed the crowd. Okay, so I won't read it, but little tee up here. So what has just happened in verse 44 and previous was the feeding of the 5,000. A miracle that probably, certainly the most public demonstration of the supernatural power of God. 5,000 people, it says feeding of the 5,000. Little nuance there, though, is probably more like feeding of the 10,000 or the 12,000, because they counted differently then. We count, okay, there's 70 people here this morning, but they kind of counted as units. So this couple here, they're a unit, that's one. Or if a family of 5 came, it's one. So it was way more than 5,000. Irrelevant, doesn't matter if it's 5,000 or 10,000. All they had was 5 loaves and 2 fish. It wasn't enough to feed 10, let alone feed 10,000 or 5,000. And you remember the story, very popular story. If you go through the crowd robbing people and they find 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish and bring it up to Jesus, and they kind of go to Jesus and they say, see, told you we don't have enough. And of course, Jesus says, we got enough. We got enough. And then Jesus does what Jesus does, and a resource offered in humility becomes multiplied, and something happens. It's great. So that's what's happened. So that's just happened, and he's finished. And he says to the guys, get in the boat, go across. So after leaving them, meaning after leaving the disciples and the people, Jesus went up on a mountainside to pray, which is what Jesus does often. He gets alone with God. So he sent the boys across the lake, and he is up on a mountainside to pray. Verse 47, later that night, the boat was in the middle of the lake, and Jesus was alone on the land. He saw the disciples straining at the oars because the wind was against them. Now, I grew up learning all my scriptures in the King James Version, so all my scripture memorization is in King James. And now I use NIV or NSAB, but that King James. So the word in my mind is they were buffeted by the waves. And I kind of like that word. I kind of like, sometimes Paul and I go fishing, and we've been in some situations where we've been buffeted by waves. The waves are just kind of relentless. I was in Grand Lake with one of our pastors in a canoe, and a wind came up, and we were buffeted by the waves. And we were overtaken by the buffeting of the waves. And if you can swim, right now there's 2 cell phones and a tackle box and some other trinkets, maybe an electric motor, maybe at the bottom of Grand Lake. I can show you where it is. It's there as we sunk a canoe and we swam to an island. We couldn't call anybody because our cell phones were at the bottom. That pastor wanted to bill me for the cell phone. But I said, I'm going to pay you for yourself. So they were buffeted by a wave. Like this during the storm. The wind was against them. 47 continues. Shortly before dawn, he went out to them walking on the lake. And this is a section I don't understand. Again, it's a Paul problem. He was about to pass them by. What? Why pass them by? He's like, hey guys. And he just keeps walking. I don't understand. Maybe Jesus was just like, well, for him, for sure, walking or rowing, flying, it doesn't matter to him. The laws of physics don't apply to him. So he's like, I'm going to get my steps in, right? I'm going to walk across the thing. And the disciples are like afraid because, they haven't seen a lot of people walking on the water. So shortly before dawn, he went out to them walking on the lake. But when they saw him walking on the lake, they thought he was a ghost. They cried out because they all saw him and they were terrified. It's a ghost, it's a ghost. And they didn't recognize him because Jesus was coming toward them in a new way. It's kind of like us sometimes, right? God does new things and we immediately say, well, that's not God, that's evil, that's a ghost. And sometimes it's just God coming at us in a new way. And we get locked into traditions and expectations of how things are supposed to be. Then God does something outside of the way things we think are supposed to be. And we're like, oh, this is not of God. And actually it is of God because he's just walking toward us in a new way. And even sometimes it's things in life that hit us. We're like, oh, this is the enemy. Yeah, it is. But nothing happens to us from the enemy without first passing through the hand of God, and God saying, okay, I'll let this one go, and then provide whatever God needs to provide or whatever we need to learn in that moment. We go, it's a ghost, it's evil. Well, sometimes it's just God doing a new thing, and sometimes it is evil, but God's got a new lesson or a new miracle in front of us. I'm not even started to preach yet. They cried out because they all saw him, and they were terrified. Immediately he spoke to them. This is Jesus talking to the disciples. He said, take courage. I don't know how, I think it's 300 and 400 times Jesus in Scripture says, don't be afraid. Fear not, don't be afraid, take courage. Hundreds of times. Yet I find myself sometimes afraid. But it's one of the most common phrases that Jesus used. Hey guys, don't be afraid. Verse 51, then he climbed into the boat with them. Get into the boat. The wind dies down. They were completely amazed. And here's a weird phrase, verse 52. For they had not understood about the loaves. Their hearts were hardened. I'm like, what? The loaves? They had not understood about the loaves? We're in a boat now. Well, it's because in the feeding of the 5,000, if you remember the story, at the end of it, they had leftovers, right? So they had taken 5 loaves of bread and multiplied it large enough to feed 10,000 people. And at the end of the story, I think it's maybe even the last verse of that story is, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of fish and bread. So every single disciple had a basket, a little doggy bag, a little Swiss chalet styrofoam container that they're out. And so literally at their feet in the boat is bread and fish. And they're scared to death that God's not going to come through. And at the feet is the evidence of God's faithfulness of the past. Like, disciples, come on, get a grip. You got evidence of the miracle working power of God in your history. And you got the bread and the fish at your feet, and you're afraid that Jesus is not going. Look at their hearts were hardened. They hadn't even understood the loaves. And I think, disciples, how dumb can you be? And the Spirit of God speaks to me and says, Jim, you're 53 years old. All my life, he's been faithful. All my life, he has been so, so good. Why should I be afraid when at my feet are basketfuls of bread and fish of the faithfulness of God over 53 years? Well, okay. I like to blame the disciples, but I gotta look at myself because I've got lots of loaves at my feet of the past faithfulness of God. Verse 53, when they had crossed over, they landed at Gennesaret and they anchored there. As soon as they got out of the boat, people recognized Jesus. They ran throughout the whole region, and they carried the sick on mats to wherever they heard he was. So they're just throwing sick people in front of Jesus, like putting them down. They grabbed them and they threw them in the pathway of Jesus, kind of like what the church does, right? That's our job. We can't fix, heal, change anybody, but we carry sick people on mats to wherever Jesus is going to be. Now, we don't know what the mats are. The mats are just a method, and every one of us has a corner or an edge of the mat that we hold, and we together bring people to Jesus. When Jesus said, I will make you fishers of men, he didn't mean one person casting a fishing line. The disciples would have understood that as net fishing, like, oh, we're gonna be fishers of men. We're gonna do it together. And that's the grabbing the mat, right, of moving together. They ran through that whole region and carried sick on mats wherever they heard he was. And wherever he went, into villages, towns, countryside, they placed the sick in marketplaces. They begged him to let them touch even the edge of his cloak, and all who touched it were healed. So this great Gennesaret just has this miracle that's so wild that they're just throwing people in front of Jesus and they're getting healed. And there even people who are touching the end of his robe are being made well. This tremendous move of God in Gennesaret. All right. So let me give you 3 things. Maybe 4 if you behave yourself. Okay? Excuse me. Verse number 48. It says these fun little words. He saw the disciples. He saw the disciples. He saw the disciples. Psalm 34:18 says, the Lord is near the brokenhearted. If you're going through something, if your heart is broken, if you have discouragement or there's something happening in your life that is unpleasant, the scripture says that God is especially near to you. The problem with that is I don't feel it. Sometimes you go through sicknesses and you go through pain, and the pain is bad enough. What really is bothersome is the fact that it seems like God has disappeared. God, why have you forsaken me? Where are you? And the disciples may have felt that way, like they're saying, okay, let's look at this objectively. We're in this boat, we're in this storm, because we did exactly what Jesus told us to do. And now he's nowhere near, he has disappeared on us. He's gone. But the truth is, he was either looking at them, either his eyes were on them, or he was walking on the water, where they wouldn't even think to look for Jesus. There he was. And they were not out of his attention. And I want to drop something into your heart today, that God sees you. He sees you. You are on his radar. You are in his focus. You are in the scope of his vision. He sees you. You may not feel it, and feelings are so tricky, but the word says he sees you. He is near the brokenhearted. So when you're facing your sicknesses, when you're facing your anxiety, when you're facing your depression, when you're facing your sadness, when you're facing your relationship challenges, when you're facing your employment challenges, when you're facing economic challenge, whenever it is happening, and the enemy would say, oh, he's disappeared on you, it's not. And take this in your heart. He sees you. He doesn't just see Pastor Keith, doesn't just see Pastor Paul. He sees all, his eyes are on us. And it gets a little more intense than that. In verse 47, let me put some math together here for you, or some scenario. In verse number 47, it says that, what does it say in verse? Oh, okay, let me tell you. Find it here. Later that night, the boat was in the middle of the lake. Now, you do the measurements of that lake at that time. Middle of the lake would have been about 4 miles. So 8 miles across. If they were in the literal middle, they'd be about 4 miles out. It doesn't matter if they were in the specific middle, but they were somewhere between 3 miles and 6 miles out there, beyond natural vision. There's a couple other things that we learn about that. We learn that it says shortly before dawn, Jesus started walking out. It's shortly before dawn. So not only are they in the middle of the lake, but it's also dark. It's also dark. They're in the. We picture Jesus walking toward the boat in a bright sunny day, but he's actually walking. That's why they were scared, because it was dark, right? So they're in the middle of the lake, and it seemed like Jesus was nowhere to be found, and it was dark. And just to add a little bit of misery to it, they were in a storm. So we know 3 things for sure. They're 4 miles out. I don't know how many kilometers that is. 6 kilometers? I don't know. They're 4 miles. They're 6 kilometers away. They're way out there. They're in the darkness, and they're in a storm. And that's when it says that Jesus saw them straining at the oars. So it wasn't a nice sunny day and Jesus looking at them. There's some guys struggling at some oars over there. It was in the dark, middle of the night, in a storm far away. And I'm sure you've had the experience in life where you've been far away, on your own, in the darkness, in the middle of a storm. And Jesus, where are you? Where are you? Just over a year ago, I live out in Elmsdale. I got up on the highway and I was making my way to work to go north to Truro, and all of a sudden everything around me went double. And I could make the double vision go away by closing one eye. So I closed one eye. Instead of turning to Truro, I drove myself to the Lower Sackville Hospital. Well, when you walk into the hospital and you say you have double vision, sudden onset, they move fast. And they're like, okay, well, you're probably having a stroke. Oh, okay. But no stroke and whatever. And they just go through all these tests. I get poked and prodded and probed and whatever else they do. And that spent the day there, come back the next day, spent another day there. And they're like, we can't seem to figure out what this is. We're going to have to start chasing and looking for brain tumors. Oh, I think I would have rather the stroke, actually. I don't know. And then goes a year of stuffing my carcass into machines and scanning and looking for stuff. Good news is they found nothing. Well, they did a brain scan, they found something. Yeah. They say they found something. But nothing, no tumors in there as far as, but I still have this double vision. So looking straight ahead, things are single. Good news, right now, there's 2 Pastor Keiths. They don't need that. Take it as you wish. There's 2 Pastor Keiths. But good news is you have 140 in church today. It's great. Like a crowd, like on the screen. And so it's been a chaos of a year. And I'm in the darkness, unknown, in the middle of a storm, and I'm feeling like Jesus is far. Like, God, I gave my life to kind of do your thing. What up? Where are you? The Lord is near the brokenhearted. He's close. He's close to those, not emotionally, but actually close to you. So I want you to hear that word today, that Jesus sees you. You are not unnoticed by God. And just because he's silent doesn't mean he's absent. Just because he's silent doesn't mean the disciples didn't expect that Jesus would be working miracles in the darkness, but here was Jesus working miracles in the darkness, strolling out to them. Okay, so number 1, I just want to drop in your heart. He sees you. And maybe that's all you need today. Maybe just an affirmation in your spirit that, okay, God sees me. It feels like I'm stuck here in this place or in this neighborhood or this country or this city or this workplace. And just, where are you? He sees you. Grab that for your own today. Number 2, the truth is there's some proof that the thing you're going through now, you're going to make it through it because you've made it through things before. Well, that sounds like a pretty clunky way to say it. The thing you're going through now, you're going to make it through because you've made it through so far. You have conquered and made it through every single storm that has ever come your way so far in life. You've made it through all those. And the next one that you're in right now, you're going to make it through that. If you're not in a storm right now, I got some bad news. But you're going to make it through. You're going to, through many dangers, toils, and snares I have already come. He's already moved you through some stuff, and he's going to bring you through again. It's just what Jesus does. And the funny part of the story, we're in Mark chapter 6, and in Mark chapter 5 is the feeding of the 5,000. But the disciples, know where they were in Mark chapter 4? So we're in 6, miracle in 5. Story in 4 is the disciples in a boat in a storm. You think they would stop listening to Jesus when he says, get in a boat. But just 2 chapters ago, they are in a boat in a storm. And you kind of remember the storm. Jesus was with them in that storm. They're out in a boat, and the storm raises up, and it's a tempest, and all kinds of chaos is happening. And the boat is taking on water, and Jesus is asleep. I know sometimes we may have felt like Jesus is asleep in our lives, but here they are again. Jesus doesn't seem to be paying attention to what's happening in their lives. They're going down, and somebody gets the courage to wake up Jesus, and they say to him in the King James Version, Master, don't you care that we perish? Don't you care that we perish? Jesus wakes up. Like those of you who have raised kids and toddlers, you wake up like, where am I? Why is there cereal on the floor? Why is there orange juice in my bed? What's happening? Jesus wakes up and he's like this, and comes to, and he's like, what's happening? And he says, wind, stop. Waves, stop. Disciples, stop. And it all calms down. And it says the same phrase it says here. They were completely amazed because they had never seen anything like this. 2 chapters later, the next day, in a boat in a storm, don't you care where's Jesus right now? Jesus, they were completely amazed because they didn't understand. God's faithfulness of your past proves his faithfulness toward your future. I'll tell you how it ends. It ends well. It ends, I'll tell you how, you're a believer in Christ. This is how it ends. It ends well. It ends well. We already know, but I got this, I got the boat, I got the storm, it ends well. It ends well because his eye is on you, and the faithfulness of God proves that he'll be faithful again. I was heading out a couple years ago to speak at a retreat with Paul in Alberta, and I think it was Calgary Airport. I landed there, and just as we're leaving the airport, I can see this flash out of my eye, and then there was this chaos over on the ground, and a guy, I think his name was Al, was driving me, and we got to a stop sign. I just jump out because there's this panic over here. I run over, and there was this guy. His name was Richard, on the ground, completely out of it. So we do CPR, we do compressions, and we try to revive him, and it was cold like this, and we kind of dragged him into a parkade, and we continued to work while we waited for the ambulance to arrive, and eventually the ambulance came, and his wallet had fallen out of his pocket, so I took the money. No, I didn't take the money. His wallet had fallen out of his pocket, and I saw his name. I forget his last name, but his first name was Richard. And that was fine, and I logged it away, and I went in with Paul for the retreat. On the way back from that retreat, it was 4 or 5 days long. It was enough time for the obituary to show up in the newspaper of this guy, Richard. So I said, I'm gonna see if I can find him. And the obituary said he's Richard, and he's married to so-and-so, and has this. And through the power of Facebook, I was able to find his wife's name, and then I was going to give her a call. So I called her, and I said, hey, I just read the obituary, and she wasn't very talkative. Of course, it was probably weird for her. I said, just want you to know, I was with Richard when he died, and I was praying for him, and we had a little conversation, and she muttered out the words, Richard was just diagnosed with terminal cancer. And so what Richard had done, though, he didn't want to go through that, and he had lost all hope. And he climbed to the top of the parkade and threw himself off the parkade onto the concrete below. And we thought he would have a chance, but there was no chance that he was going to recover from that. And I think about that moment many, many times. And we've all kind of been there where all hope is gone, right? All hope is gone. And some of you, and me included, have had those suicidal thoughts where this is just, I'm tapping out. But the faithfulness of God says, because of what he has done in our past, there may be a battle ahead of me, but I know that there is a battle already behind me. There's one in my rear view mirror. I've seen healings. I've seen demons cast out. I've seen things happen in my past that prove that he's going to be faithful again, and I can have hope. I can have hope because Jesus is walking my way. He didn't bring me this far just to say, this is as far as you go. He brought me this far to show me he's going to bring me all the way. And it's just a little bit of hard rowing. It's just a little bit of hard rowing before the next feeding of the 5,000. It's just a little bit of hard rowing before the next miracle. This isn't a message for everybody else in the room. Listen to me. This is a message for you. Those of you who are struggling. All right. Maybe I was when I said we were going to be a couple hours. Maybe I was being, that was prophetic. Last one is this. We'll let you go. This one here, this is a Paul Fraser question. I don't understand it. In verse 45, Jesus says to the disciples, get into the boat and go to Fish House. Get in the boat, go to Bethsaida. That's what he says. Get in the boat, go to Bethsaida. In verse 53, 58, somewhere along there, it says, when they had landed in Gennesaret. Wait, what? You landed where now? Jesus gave them very clear instructions. Get in the boat and go to Bethsaida. First, I'll ever find the verse to make sure you don't think. Yeah, verse 53. When they landed in Gennesaret. Right? We know what happened, right? We know they got in the boat, and they had full intention of sailing to Bethsaida, like all of us. We meet Jesus, and like, I'm going to serve Jesus every day for the rest of my life. I'm going to do exactly what Jesus tells me to do. But a couple hours in to their obedience, they find themselves in a storm. In Nova Scotia, we have that phrase, any port in a storm will do. When you're in a storm, and just find a piece of solid. When I sunk the canoe, I just looked for the shortest island to swim to. Any port in a storm will do. They didn't get in the boat and say, changed my mind. I don't want to go to Fish House. It's kind of stinky. I want to go to Gennesaret where Walmart is, or whatever it is that was the Gennesaret. Like, I want to go to Gennesaret. They probably didn't do that. But a storm came, and all their intentions went out the window. And they forgot all about being obedient to the thing Jesus has said, because life hit them. And they had fully, honestly, sincerely wanted to do what Jesus said to do, just like you and me. And then life gives you a kick, and you get off track, and you step out of the will of God. And I don't know how God does it. This is, Paul Fraser question. You can ask him afterwards. He's having a theological class in the basement afterwards. There's going to be snacks, donuts. Help yourself. He'll be down there. Somehow, God gives us plan A, and then we mistaken and we sinfully step into plan B, which then God makes plan A. I don't get it. That doesn't make sense to me. And here's a couple of mind-bending things. Jesus comes walking across the water to them. The boys are sailing to the wrong place. Jesus gets in the boat with them and sails with them to the place of their disobedience. Oh boy, Paul Fraser, step up for this one. Like, wait. So they're going the wrong place. Jesus gets in the boat. He doesn't say, guys, get back on course and go to Bethsaida. He sails with them to the place they weren't supposed to go. Now, I was brought up every night, you give yourself back to Jesus. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. Right? If I die before I wake, I forget how it goes now. I haven't prayed it for a while. Maybe I should. But we just, every day, I would pray a prayer as a kid. Lord, I don't even know what sins I did today, but would you forgive me for all of them? And we were kind of told, like, if we were sinning and Jesus was to return, that we would be lost forever because we were sinning. I remember when I went to my first movie. Now, when you were growing up, you weren't allowed to go to movies, the movie theater. It was the cinema, right? We weren't allowed to go to movies. And I went without my parents' or my church's or my pastor's knowledge. I went to the movie theater to watch the movie E.T. E.T. That little demon. E.T. Now, here's the thing. I don't remember the movie. I don't know if he got to go home. I don't know if he got the phone home. I don't know. I just remember a bicycle and the guy with the glowing finger. I don't remember the movie because I was so scared that the trumpet would sound and Jesus would arrive And I would go up and I'd hit the roof of the movie theater and I'd be smacked back down to 13B seat, and me and E.T. would be there for eternity. Because I was told, you mess up. I guess the grace of God wasn't big enough for that. And so you just lived in it. The great thing about Jesus is even when we are disobeying him, he doesn't leave us. He says, I will never leave you or forsake you. He says, for I am with you until the end of time. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Even E.T. can't stop you from being with Jesus, from being with you. So Jesus sees the disciples are going the wrong place, and maybe you're going the wrong place right now, like, oh, God's given up on me because obviously I'm doing something wrong, or because I'm doing this, or I have this sin, I have this habit, I have this. You should still deal with it, no question. But Jesus isn't running away from you because of your sin. In fact, he's drawing closer to you. Even in this moment, the sin that comes to mind and him speaking to you about it is actually him drawing close to you. Getting in the boat and sailing with you as you journey toward a destination that was never intended for you. He's still there. Now that's head-bending enough that I could go somewhere that Jesus doesn't want me to go and Jesus would still go with me there. That's head-bending enough. But let me mix it up again. Donuts, coffee, Paul Fraser in the basement. You'll figure it out. Jesus gets in the boat. He sails with them to the place of their disobedience. They land in Gennesaret. And a whole bunch of people experienced the transformational power of Jesus because the disciples made a mistake. It's not. Listen, I'm not a theologian. That's why we brought the big guy from the international office, right? I don't understand it. I don't understand how their mistake, yet the faithfulness and the miracle-working power of God, Gennesaret gets the miracle that Bethsaida was going to get. Of course, Jesus knew all along what was going to happen. And they get this miracle. And somehow, the mistakes that the disciples made gave miracle to somebody else. And he takes their mistake and makes ministry out of it. Listen, everything is redeemable. Everything is redeemable. Every mistake you've made can serve as at least a warning sign, but it might be a miracle for somebody else, your mistake. I have had complete emotional collapse. I would never want to go through it again. And honestly, it was my own doing that got me in that sad state. And it was my mistake. But the number of times I've been able to sit with a young leader or a pastor and say, hey, pal, I get it. I know it. I was on a coaching call just last week with a young gal, and she was embarrassed, and she said, I want to tell you a little bit of my journey, but I'm so embarrassed, I'm so this and that. I ended up in a mental hospital, and I ended up in a da-da-da-da-da. And I stopped her and said, okay, before you go any further, let me just make this easy on you. Hey, been there. And she's like, what? And of course, now she's seeing me as a, district office person who has it all together. Keith knows better, right? And she's like, yeah, you were, yeah. And Jesus takes my mistake and makes a miracle out of it. And whatever it is that you have made as mistakes, Jesus can make ministry out of it. And your storm can be somebody else's story of victory. There are things that my kids have not had to go through because I did them or I went through them, and I said to my boys, don't do that, because this is what's going to happen if you do. And my life has served as a warning sign to other people that if they do the things that I did, they will what will happen to them is what happened to me. And you can sidestep the grief that is in front of you if you learn from my mistake. Jesus wasn't planning, of course he was, to be in Gennesaret. But everybody, verse 56, everybody who touched his cloak was healed. They didn't know he was coming that day. He wasn't on the manifest. So that storm, it's not going to break you. It's actually going to make a miracle. Not only is he going to, fix it, he's also going to use it. God gives us miracles. Sometimes he heals us, delivers us, and there's a lot of value in that for us. But we also get to tell the story of God healed us and delivered us. And there's glory that can be given to God. Even in the middle of their mistake, glory given to God. I know that's a lot. That's enough for now. That's a bit of a headbender and joking around about the theology of it. And here's the truth, folks. And we want to get into arguments and debates about theology, and we do have to have good theology. But here's the harsh reality. If God was small enough to be understood, he would not be big enough to handle our storm. So I got to read scriptures like this and say, I don't understand the will of God, and I don't understand the grace of God. But I'm a recipient of it, and I'll take it. I'll take it. And maybe over the millions of years that we were with Jesus, he can unpack some of it to give us some sense of what he was up to or why or how does this work. But today we just rest.